Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the creator of the BlackBrazilToday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So, quite honestly, I delayed, quite a few days to discuss this matter, this situation. But I knew there would come a time like I couldn't wait much longer. The story had already been discussed globally and international news outlets. So as this is something that I've covered, in previous posts on the blog, it's something that I definitely have to discuss. I've said many times I don't like to focus a lot on the violent nature of things that come out of Brazil on a daily basis, because I didn't really want this side of Brazil to dominate either my blog or the video channel. But, it comes to a point where, it is what it is. You have to discuss these things because, if you don't, you can't really give people a one-sided view of a particular place, for the positive and the negative. It's part of the country. So then people should know about this type of stuff. I explained this to one of my friends. I know a number of African Americans who have lived in Brazil, currently live in Brazil, or, spent their time there and then came back to the US or went to another country, whatever. So one of my contacts in Bahia, shout out to my man's Marcus, we discussed this through a communication app like a few days ago, where he sent me the report. It says, well, look, I understand you don't like talking about stuff because it gets depressing, but you got to cover this because now, it's international news. So I saw that a few days ago that the British media outlet, The Guardian, covered this story. So, The Guardian talks quite a bit about stuff that goes on in Brazil. So, as this story hopefully it does get international attention. I've seen a few other outlets that have reported on this. So, sometimes I'll take a few days just to see if, what more information is going to come out about the particular topic. And, like I said, I think this happened probably 6 or 7 days ago, maybe. So definitely have to cover this. It is what it is. It's just, every time I see one of these stories, it's another, I don't know, dagger in the heart or something. So if you hadn't heard about this story, being that this is coming out of Brazil, it's very possible that you haven't heard about it because, as I said, as much brutality, murder, violence goes down in Brazil, Brazil's just not necessarily, on the radar of just international news. I mean, you get stories out of Brazil, but they don't cover it the way that they should. So I have to talk about this sad news, this tragic news, this horrific news. The woman known as Mother, or, in Portuguese, they say Mãe Bernadete Pacífico. She was a Quilombola and Maroon Society leader. She was brutally murdered in Bahia. The murder could be linked to real estate speculation. So without delaying too much about this story, I'm going to try to just move right into this. But I do want to, let me just set this up real quick. Because as I've said this a number of times again and again, that if I wanted to, I could devote a whole blog or a whole video channel just to certain aspects of Brazil. I could talk about violence every day, but, do you really want to pay attention to something like that on a regular basis? I will just say that Mãe Bernadette, when I first heard that she was assassinated, I thought of a couple of motives. Number one, she is what they call a Mãe de Santo. She is the religious leader of, there's two religions where people are defined as a Mãe de Santo. One is the Candomblé and the other one is Umbanda. And these two religions are highly just demonized throughout Brazil. If you ever look through the history of this, it's a clear example of religious intolerance. It's like there are Brazilians who follow these types of religions, but they do it kind of underground. Sometimes they don't want people to even know that they're associated with the religion because of the negative, thoughts that people have about these particular religions. It's like Brazil is considered a Catholic country, it's considered a Christian country, and this is just another manifestation of the racism that you see in Brazil. A lot of people look at the Candomblé and Umbanda religions as some type of, satanic, uh, we say just people believe it evokes, satanic spirits. The closest thing I can say for you to have an understanding of how these religions are demonized are the way that the voodoo or Vodun religion, how it's seen in American culture. What comes to mind when you think of what's called voodoo, even though it should be pronounced as Vodun? It has this, it has kind of like a witchcraft kind of connotation that people have who know very little about the religion. And in Brazil, these religions, particularly Candomblé, carry these same connotations. You always get stories of their houses of worship being destroyed, being burned to the ground, religious leaders being threatened and killed. So Mãe Bernadete was a religious leader. She in the Umbanda faith. But she was also a Quilombola. She was a leader of a Quilombola. And we saw this in the title of the article. The Quilombo in Brazil is similar to what was called the Maroon Society in the United States. During the slavery era, this is where fugitive slaves would go to set up their own communities away from the society. They would live on their own means, right? So Americans call them Maroon Societies. Brazil calls them Quilombos, and you have Quilombos all over the country. These are the leftover communities after slavery ended. So you've got, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of these Quilombos all over the country. And it's a constant struggle because the people are fighting to obtain, the titles, to the land that their ancestors have been living on for centuries. All right. Today, it said, well, this is according to a 2018 report, says that less than 7% of Quilombo areas in Brazil have titles to their land. Okay. What else did I want to discuss before I get into this article? Brazil is just, let's just be real. It's a very violent country, particularly for those who are not white. This is a story that broke from, 2020 on the eve of the National Black Consciousness Day, where this guy went to Carrefour, which is a French super center. He was attacked by these third-party security agents. They brutally assaulted him. They beat him. They jumped on top of his back with the knee in the back. They choked him. 40-year-old João Alberto died at the hands of these security forces. And what else I want to talk about? Let me see. For the OAS, Inter-American Commission, Brazil is racist and it exterminates its undesirables. Now, who do you think they're talking about when they say undesirables in Brazil? Shocking. Brazil police killed 17 times the number of blacks than American police killed in 2019. What else needs to be said there? I mean, I've talked a lot about police violence on the blog, and I'm slowly moving into that territory on the YouTube channel as well. As I said, Brazil is a very violent country. This is from Exame magazine, and it just gives you a report from, I don't know what years. This is from 2012 to 2022. These are violent deaths in Brazil since, again, 2012. So see these numbers. This looks like about 55,000 to 50, about 55, 59, 58,000, 61,000, 64,000 in 2017, which was a peak. It's fallen since then, but last year it was still at 47,000. So it can't be denied. Brazil is just a very violent, dangerous country. For all the things that I like about Brazil, this is something that people, particularly if you're a tourist, if you want to know a little bit about Brazil, this comes with the territory. So let me get into today's story. Okay, so this is Mother Bernadete Pacífico was murdered, like, I don't know, about 6 or 7 days ago. Today's article drew from numerous sources. The information for today's piece comes courtesy of Política Livre, Jornal Extra, Alma Preta, Portal Rap Mais, Educa Mais Brasil. The government is sending teams to the scene of the crime, and the governor of Bahia promises commitment to the investigation. The victim had her son, or the victim's son, was killed 6 years ago. So when I first heard about Mãe Bernadete being assassinated in Bahia, and I heard that her son's name was Binho, and I was like, why does that name sound familiar? And then when I saw the picture of Binho, her son, who was assassinated in 2017, I quickly remembered why it is that I knew this name. Is because I covered this story back in 2017. Another Quilombola community leader murdered in Bahia. 36-year-old Binho, latest in a string of assassinations, most likely connected to land rights. So this woman's son, Binho, was actually murdered in 2017, probably by the same forces that took her out last week. So that's why this story, it resonates with me, because I remember when I put this story up 6 years ago, and here it is. They killed the son, now they've killed the mother. So on August 17, 2023, Quilombola, or Quilombo Pitanga dos Palmares leader, Maria Bernadete Pacífico, also known as Mãe Bernadete, was brutally murdered in her community in the metropolitan region of Salvador, Bahia. Again, Salvador, the capital city of the state of Bahia. It's known for its strong, vibrant Black culture there. It is like the African cultural center of Brazil. Mother Bernadete was a prominent figure in the struggle for racial equality and the preservation of Quilombola traditions. She had also held the position of secretary for the promotion of racial equality of Simões Filho, a city in Bahia. Her trajectory was marked by dedication to the cause and resistance. According to information from the Bahia Department of Public Security, 2 individuals wearing helmets to hide their identities invaded the community's terreiro and took Mãe Bernadete's family hostage. They carried out the fatal shots using a firearm. The murder brings to light the sad memory of her son, Flávio Gabriel Pacífico dos Santos, better known as Binho do Quilombo, who was killed almost 6 years ago on September 19, 2017. Faced with this tragedy, the governor of Bahia, Jerônimo Rodrigues, issued orders to the military and civil police to conduct rigorous investigation into what happened. Okay, so I mentioned this term, terreiro, and a terreiro is a house of worship for these religions. One's called Umbanda and one is called Candomblé. This is where people go, to practice their religion. They're called terreiros. So this is the guy, Binho, who is Bernadette's son, who was killed 6 years ago, and now his mother's gone. Denildo Rodrigues from the National Coordination for the Articulation of Quilombola Rural Black Communities, or CONAC, points to a link between the murder of Mãe Bernadete and the group responsible for the death of her son, Binho. He points out that she had knowledge of the killers and the justice system was aware of who was behind Binho's murder, but no action was taken at that time. Her continued struggle and active voice about injustice may have been the motives behind this terrible act. This is Denildo Rodrigues, and he's in this particular video, he's talking about the struggle of Black people for their territory. Rodrigues also said that Bernadette cared more about the safety of the community than for her own safety. She knew that whoever killed Binho was close to the community, and was never quiet. Now she has been silenced, he said. An overview of the Quilombo, the Quilombo community of Pitanga de Palmares, right? The Quilombola and terreiro communities of Simões Filho face constant threats from groups linked to real estate speculation, which seek to occupy the territories historically belonging to these communities. The capital of Bahia, again, Salvador, is recognized by the IBGE Quilombola census as the city with the largest Quilombola population in the country. The IBGE is linked to the Brazilian government, and it's the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics. So they come out with all types of reports throughout the year. This is a picture of some kids, and a couple adults in the Quilombo Pitanga dos Palmares. Okay. Konaki issued a note demanding immediate action by the Brazilian state to protect the leaders of the Pitanga de Palmares Quilombo. The entity expresses deep sorrow for the loss of Mãe Bernadete, highlighting her wise and inspiring role. The organization emphasizes the need for a rapid and effective investigation to identify and punish those responsible for the series of violent crimes that have victimized Quilombola leaders. So, just like her son was murdered 6 years ago, there have been a number of assassinations of Quilombola leaders over the years. Given the seriousness of the situation, a delegation composed of the Ministries of Racial Equality, Justice, and Human Rights plans to hold face-to-face meetings in Bahia. The goal is to provide support to victims and family members, as well as ensuring protection for threatened territories. The Ministry of Racial Equality will also convene an extraordinary meeting of the working group to confront religious racism. The Pitanga dos Palmares Quilombo, under the leadership of Mãe Bernadete, encompasses about 289 families and occupies an area of 854.2 hectares. Officially recognized in 2017 by the National Institute of Colonization and Agrarian Reform, the community has already received certification from the Fundação Palmares, meaning the Palmares Foundation. However, the process of titling the Quilombo is still pending. Okay. Is there anything in there I need to discuss? Let me see. So this discussion about agrarian reform has been going on for a number of years. The process is still slow, still very ongoing. And as the stats said from 2018, still today, only 7% of Quilombolas own, the territory where they and their ancestors have lived for hundreds of years. The Palmares Cultural Foundation is an institution linked to the federal government's Ministry of Culture. It was created by law number 7668 of August 22nd, 1988, to promote and preserve the cultural, historical, social, and economic values resulting from Black influence in the formation of Brazilian society. The foundation's aim is to develop an egalitarian and inclusive cultural policy that contributes to the valorization or appreciation of Black Brazilian history, cultural, and artistic manifestations as national heritage. Recently, a survey carried out by the Network of Safety Observatories revealed Bahia as the second state with the most occurrences of violence against traditional peoples and communities in Brazil, with 428 victims reported between 2017 and 2022. This sad scenario highlights the urgency of effective measures to ensure security and justice for Quilombola communities and their leaders. Pacífico, 72, was shot dead on the night of Thursday, August 17th in Simões Filho, Bahia. And she denounced the threats that she and other members of her community, Pitanga dos Palmares, suffered during a meeting with the president of the Federal Supreme Court, Rosa Weber, in July of this year. The meeting took place in Quilombo community in Lauro de Freitas in the metropolitan region of Salvador. Feel like there's something else I need to be okay. Just over the top violence. It said that Mãe Bernadete's son was taken out with 6 shots. The reports are saying that she was shot 12 times in the head. What can be said? Just brutality. Oftentimes when somebody's shot once or twice in the head, they're already dead. What's the point of let me just keep going. In her speech, Mãe Bernadete, as she was known, spoke of her struggle to clarify the death of her son, Flavio Gabriel Pacífico dos Santos, also known as Binho. He was murdered in 2017 by armed men, and said that she was also being threatened. This is what the headline says for the UOL video on this topic. Before being killed, the Quilombo leader, Mãe Bernadete, she warned about the violence. For you to have an idea, to this day, I don't know the result of my son's murder. It shook up everyone. It was in the same period that Marielle's death happened. Speaking of Marielle Franco, the city councilwoman in Rio de Janeiro, who was assassinated on March 14th, 2018, in a drive-by hit that made international headlines. They still haven't come to clearly define who Marielle's murder killer was, but it's getting closer and closer to an official announcement. I've seen a few people who have admitted to participating in the crime, but knowing who pulled the trigger is one thing, but they're still trying to figure out who ordered the murder of Marielle Franco. She continues. In fact, I went to several meetings with Marielle's mother. This is unfair. I recently lost another male friend and a female friend in a Quilombo. That's what we received. Threats, mainly from farmers, from people in the region, she said, addressing the minister of Brazil's federal Supreme Court. She also reported that she was under surveillance, which didn't prevent her from being murdered. Like, she had protection. She had protective forces that were supposed to be around her. So, but she still got killed. She said, today I live like this. I can't leave because I'm being searched. My house is full of cameras. I feel bad, but that's what happens, she said at the time. In a statement released on Friday, Supreme Court Minister Rosa Weber said she deeply regretted the death. Mãe Bernadete, who told me personally about the violence to which the Quilombolas are exposed and revealed the pain of losing her son with 14 shots within the community, was killed in unexplained circumstances, said the minister. Okay, so I'm wondering if they're talking about her or her son, because one report that I saw said he took 6 shots. And it says here that he took 14 shots. So, whether we're talking about her or him, just brutal assassinations here. The local authorities must adopt measures for the urgent clarification and reparation of what happened, highlighted Rosa Weber, so that those who sponsored the cowardly plot are held accountable and Mãe Bernadete's relatives and other local leaders are immediately protected. It is absolutely appalling that the Quilombolas, whose ancestors fought with all their strength and lost their lives to escape slavery, still live in a situation of extreme vulnerability in their lands today. As is the right of all Brazilians, Quilombolas need to live in peace and have their individual rights respected, she added. In a note published on Twitter, Brazil's President Lula da Silva expressed his regret. He said, the federal government, through the Ministries of Racial Equality and Human Rights and Citizenship, sent representatives, and we await the rigorous investigation of the case. My condolences to the family and friends of Mãe Bernadete. Mãe de Santo, in the Umbanda religion, she was also the Secretary of Policies for the Promotion of Racial Equality in the municipality of Simões Filho, another city in Bahia, where her house of worship, or terreiro, is located. This was during the administration of Mayor Eduardo Alencar between 2009 and 2016. In 2017, she received the title of Citizen of Simões Filho, granted by the City Council. Until her death, she was in charge of the National Coordination of Articulation of Quilombola Rural Black Communities, or CONAC, one of the most prestigious entities among Quilombolas in the country. Mãe Bernadete was known for defending popular Quilombola culture. According to her other son, Wellington Pacífico, his mother was a welcoming person at the time. And at the time, she was dominated by criminals. She was accompanied by her grandchildren, who used to frequent and sleep at her house. According to him, his mother bothered powerful people, she bothered powerful people who were involved in her son Binho's death. It's a crime of command. It's the same people. If the government, the police, the justice system want to solve this crime, it's easy. The house has cameras, he said in an interview. If the court wants to solve it, it solves it. I know I'm the next target, but I'm not afraid, and I will continue to fight for my rights because the Quilombola is resistance, he said. So the other son feels that his life is at risk. I mean, obviously it would make sense. Like, okay, his brother was killed, his mother was killed. He's still in the land and he's not afraid. Who can deny that he's probably being followed around right now? I feel for this guy. In addition to having national expression in the Quilombola milieu, Bernadette was a present was a very present leader in the Pitanga dos Palmares Quilombo. She was responsible for an association of more than 120 farmers who produced fruits such as pineapple, plantains, and passion fruit, yams, and tubers used in the manufacture of flour for vatapá. Anyone who's been to Brazil and has eaten Brazilian cuisine is very familiar with vatapá. It's kind of like a paste that's made out of, I know it's made out of shrimp and I think it's like coconut oil and various other ingredients. It's something that people will put on another dish, another, like it's like a fried fritter called a acarajé. Something you have to try at least once in your life anyway. The Quilombo was certified in 2004 by the Palmares Cultural Foundation, but the titling process has not yet been completed. The leader, Mãe Bernadete, also fought for the regularization of Quilombola territories. In August 2019, she signed a letter with other leaders of the state of Bahia addressed to the state and federal governments and the National Congress, demanding the guarantee of territorial rights of 18 remaining Quilombo communities in Bahia. Again, this process of securing the rights, of the land on paper. Mãe Bernadete worked in a region with a high concentration of Quilombolas. Salvador was identified by the IBGE Quilombola census as the capital city of Brazil with the largest Quilombola population in the country. There are almost 16,000 Quilombolas and only 5 Quilombos are officially registered. It is also the region of the country with the highest concentration of Terreiros in the Umbanda religion. According to the Center for Afro-Oriental Studies of the Federal University of Bahia, there are 1,165 Terreiros registered in the capital city of Bahia alone. The city of Simões Filho, where the crime took place, was identified as the third most violent. Let me try this again. The city of Simões Filho, where the crime took place, was identified as the third most violent in Brazil, according to 2022 data released last month by the Brazilian Security Forum. The homicide indicator reached 87.4 people per 100,000 being murdered. The state of Bahia has a total of 12 cities among the 50 most violent cities in the country. 12 of 50 of the most violent cities in the country are located in the state of Bahia. And I've brought this up before, Bahia is known for its large Black population, and then you have 12 of the top 50 most violent cities in Brazil, and they're located in Bahia. What does that tell us? The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights condemned the murder of the Quilombola leader, Mãe Bernadete. The religious leader was shot dead at the Quilombo Pitanga dos Palmares in Salvador. In a note released by the organization on social networks on Saturday the 19th, the entity points out the need for the crime to be investigated immediately and diligently with an ethnic, racial, and gender perspective. The Inter-American Commission urges the state to sanction those responsible for materials and intellectuals and to consider as the motive for the murder the role that Ialorisha Bernadette, Ialorisha it means Mãe de Santo, again, religious leader in the Umbanda and Candomblé faiths. So say they want to find, they're trying to find the motive for the murder. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights urges the state to sanction those responsible for materials and intellectuals and to consider as the motive for the murder the role that Ialorisha Bernadette played as a defender of the rights of people of African descent, the entity said. So the Ialorisha just means Mãe de Santo, the religious leader in Umbanda and Candomblé. And so the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights are, investigating, looking into this crime as possible having, racial motives. As I've said, I'm looking at it like she was a Quilombola, she was a leader of Umbanda, plus she was a Black woman. All three of those can make you be marked for death in Brazil. It's the reality. The United Nations also spoke out about the case. In a statement, the UN Human Rights Regional Office for South America expressed solidarity with Mãe Bernadette's family by calling on the Brazilian government to carry out a prompt, impartial, and transparent investigation into the death of the Quilombola leader. UN Human Rights expresses its solidarity with the family and community of this recognized Black Quilombola woman, a representative of a religion of African origin and defender of her territory, the organization said. According to the Secretary of Justice and Human Rights of Bahia, Felipe Freitas, teams from the state government and the Ministry of Human Rights and Citizenship are working to improve protection programs. The death of a human rights defender is a tragedy, especially if she has already been threatened. A tragedy like this needs to make us improve the program, improve protective measures, improve policing actions throughout the country, said the secretary in a report published by Agência Brasil. Freitas assured that the teams are in the field to ensure the safety of activists in the region. Relatives of Mãe Bernadete were removed from the Quilombo Pitanga dos Palmares as a protective measure. The religious leader had been in the Victims and Witnesses Protection Program since 2017, when her son Binho do Quilombo was also shot dead. Aniele Franco, who is the Minister of Racial Equality, and she is actually the sister of the aforementioned Marielle Franco, who was murdered back in 2018 in a professional style execution. So Aniele Franco is part of she's part of the Racial Equality Department of Brazil's federal government, and she's acts as the minister. Franco expressed dismay at what happened, noting that criminals invaded the terreiro where Bernadette was. Franco denounced the lethality of religious racism, pointing to the magnitude of the violence that emerges from this context. Throughout her journey, Mãe Bernadete fought tirelessly to solve the case of the murder of her son, Binho. Her courage in facing all the adversaries inherent in this search for justice, in addition to her dedication to the preservation of her son's memory and dignity, made her a remarkable figure, acting on the front lines of social struggles. So before I wrap up this video, I wanted to just show a couple of articles that speak on, what you can call religious intolerance in Brazil, where, the houses of worship for people who adhere to the Candomblé or Umbanda faith, these terreiros are constantly under attack. The people are under attack, and there's just been story after story, for just decades now of how people who don't like these religions will try to destroy their places of worship, threaten the leaders. The 2019, I have a number of stories on here. In 2019, 8 suspects of plundering an Afro-Brazilian religious temple are arrested. Here you had the demolition of a Candomblé temple in Brasilia and religious freedom. In this report from 2019, in the state of Bahia, which is the state we're talking about in today's story, cases of intolerance against Afro-Brazilian religions have increased 2,250%. The latest is attack on a monument symbolizing Black resistance to slavery. Look at this story. Religious intolerance leads to death of 90-year-old priestess. This was another religious leader, and a stoning in the head of an 11-year-old girl. Both are initiates of the Candomblé. Fanatical evangelicals are accused in both incidents. So it could go on and on. Look at this headline here. Rio judge declares Afro-Brazilian religions are not religions. He retracts his statement, but there's a long history of religious persecution. It continues. One religious leader, which is called a Baba, it's not religious intolerance, and it is indeed racism. This is another religious leader of Candomblé. He sat at a round table on violence against the sacred spaces of African-oriented religions like Candomblé. So look at this one right here. They kill us in the name of Jesus. Followers of Candomblé religion detail threats against them by Protestants and dope dealers for Jesus. Some of the things that you hear about the people who are, they're against Afro-Brazilian origin religions. And these people will say that they're going after Candomblé people, Candomblé terreiros in the name of Jesus. Dope dealers for Jesus. So they'll have gang affiliations. They sell drugs. They might even be killing people, but they'll see themselves as being religious people. So anyway, I'm going to end this article here today. Just, another tragic story coming out of Bahia. As I said, I don't think it's a coincidence at all that Bahia is one of the blackest states in the country, and this is where you get all of these murders going on. But Bahia is consistently near the top in, either police violence or everyday street violence. Just coincidence. That's like one of the blackest states in the country. Again, Bernadette's son Binho was killed 6 years ago in a similar fashion. Okay, so I don't particularly care to share these stories, but it's news and it's something that we have to talk about because any Brazilian can tell you that the country is very violent. But for those who want to visit Brazil, these are just some of the things that you do need to know. Whatever part of the country that you happen to visit. So, anyway, as I said, I'm going to close this video here. I'm going to ask you to share your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Share this video, like this video, consider subscribing to the channel. Smash that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new videos. And with that said, I'm gonna end this this video about this tragic news that came out, and just want to invite you to come and check out my next video.